Hello and welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering podcast. This is episode 4, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host James. How's it going, dude?
Yeah, pretty good. Slight cold, so if my voice is slightly huskier than normal, that would be why, but otherwise doing pretty well.
No, all good. Awesome. We have a great episode for you all today. There will be time codes down in the notes below if you want to jump around. Our main topic today is the Cube set review for March the Machine's Aftermath. There's about 50 cards or so in the set, and there's some good ones for Cube, so we're going to be going through those and kind of chatting about what we think of them. But firstly, let's jump into the news. So probably the biggest bit of news over the past few weeks is that standard rotation is changing from rotating every 2 years to every 3 years, meaning that cards will be available in standard for a whole extra 12 months. So, as someone who has not played that much standard, I feel perfectly valid in voicing my opinions on the internet about this. My general take is I think overall it's probably good for players who are playing standard. Having your cards be around a year longer is going to be better. It means that if you're investing in the deck, your money will go longer. In terms of power level as well, I could see that it makes the format more powerful, just there's more cards to build from. And it also, with that, it might make the transition into older formats slightly more viable. So maybe if there's like a more powerful deck in standard now, it might be able to transfer into Pioneer that little bit easier. Modern might be a bit more tricky, but like I think taking a good standard deck into Pioneer might definitely be doable after this. On the flip side, I actually think this is worse for people who don't play standard. So this is my take as someone who hasn't played that much of it, is that I used to pick up a lot of cards that were pricey because of standard when rotation happened. And I'm assuming that this is just going to be this year, it is, because basically there's no rotation this year. There will still be a rotation next year, and there'll be one every year after that. So it's a small pain to kind of maybe help things for the good of the format. While that's not necessarily great for me, like a Commander Cube player who wants to get hold of cards a little bit cheaper, I can see that being better for players in standards, just their cards retaining value that little bit more. But again, on the downside of this, I am assuming as well that it means that there will have to be more bans to keep the format fresh. Like the end result of this could mean that a deck is only actually around for 2 years, and then a key card gets banned because they want to freshen it up or something like that. But I guess with that, like the support cards or the mana bases will still be legal, which is good. So just like you only need to buy your lands once every 3 years. That's just a very nice thing in general. James, I know you've played a lot more of these formats than me, and you generally play competitively. Like, what's your thoughts on the change to every 3 years?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm inclined to think it's going to work out as a net positive. I think the first thing to say as standard is that something did need to change. The decline in people playing, particularly standard in paper, is pretty remarkable. Like 5 years ago, I think if you went into most game stores, it would be like standard and draft would be the two most played formats. Now you'll see way more Pioneer and Modern and almost no standard. I think it's certainly true in London. I get the impression that's true pretty much everywhere. And I think a lot of that is linked to it's coming back quite a lot now, but there was a real dry spell for competitive play. I think like standard was always the default format for organized play. So when that kind of fell off a cliff with the moving to MPL, which was not something that was attainable for most players, that I think really hurt standard. So they do need to do something to try and revive it. So moving to 3-year standard, there's a way you could look at this and think this was going to be really bad because I've got to play against Shieldred and Fable of Mirrorbreaker for another year. No, thank you. I'll go and play a Pioneer where at least when I play against those cards, they're equally balanced as in opposed to like, hey, look at all my mediocre cards, but it's fine because I have this Fable of Mirrorbreaker and this Shieldred in my deck.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's many formats you can go to escape Shieldred or Fable of the Mirrorbreaker at the moment.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Although personally, I wouldn't want to escape Fable of the Mirrorbreaker actually. But I'm pretty sure that's not how it's going to play out. because so another thing that was announced along with this 3-year rotation period was they're returning to scheduled ban announcements and have one a year scheduled in for standard. So the way I would interpret that is that basically once a year we're kind of going to have a mini rotation. Not that it's going to be banning hundreds of cards, but even if it's like, even if you say there was like 2 really good decks in the format, they're pretty balanced. And in the normal spot, you'd say, okay, we don't need to ban anything right now. There's like 2 tier 1 decks and a few tier 2 decks. Normally, they don't touch that format. I think if they have a yearly ban announcement, they're going to say, okay, we're banning like 2 cards from each of the top decks just to shake things up, would be my guess of how we're going to run this. We don't have that explanation from Wizards yet. I think the B&R announcement is going up in a few days when we're recording, but I'm pretty sure that's how they're going to end up running it. And I'm pretty on board with that. I think it means you don't have a standard that gets really stale from just a few cards that were printed that were too good. But you also don't have to worry as much as a player about buying into a standard deck and then it getting banned in a month's time. You at least have some level of security that unless something really bad happens, it's not going to be banned until that scheduled announcement.
No, I think I also remember reading in the article that they've said that they are giving themselves a window of like 2 weeks after a set comes out to also make bans, which I'm assuming is more if they, because this has happened before where they printed a card and then realized it doesn't work, or it's just immediately broken. Like there was one a few years ago which kind of infinitely flickered itself or something like that.
Yeah, Feldar Guardian should have gone a lot quicker. Yes. Yeah, and they've even had to do the emergency errata thing, so I guess that's still on the table. Looking at you, hostage taker. Yeah, no, that's true. So you still give them that window, but that I guess is not a window where they're likely going to be. They'd only be banning cards from a new set, I imagine. But it gives you a bit more security as a player that just they could ban at any time, right?
No, exactly.
But also the expectation that the format's not going to get really stale.
No, I'd agree. That makes sense. And I think in general, like when I came back to Magic, so like played as a kid and we just played with all the old cards that we owned basically at the time. Then when I came back, it was kind of like, well, I want to play with these cards as well as the new cards. Oh, so that's why I kind of ended up playing Commander. And like, yeah, I will be honest, like I was definitely put off standard from the start just by like, oh, you can play these cards for 18 months or something like that. Then a lot of these expensive ones you can't use anymore. It's like that is definitely a bit of a tougher sell, especially to new players who also in theory are buying these cards on like Arena as well as buying them in paper. If you know they're going to be around for longer, it does definitely feel like it could incentivize newer players especially to kind of, this is your way into an older format.
Yeah.
Or your way into Magic.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other strength standard has for me is that the set specific themes tend to like actually get a place to play out in standard, whereas they don't in something like Commander or Modern or whatever. Or maybe I guess you can always build a deck in Commander, but you're never like, oh, there was a cool vampire tribal theme in this set, I'm going to go and build modern vampires. That's not really how it works. But with standard, like I think most of the set themes, if they're well supported, there's at least like a tier 3 standard deck you can build out of them, right? So I think that like transition from I've played a bit with this set, I want to go and build a competitive deck out of it, that works a bit better for standard.
I think we're kind of both in a similar agreement. They're kind of like overall good change. Let's see where it lands. It doesn't mean they might not change it again in the future, but yeah, I think as you pointed out, especially something needed to be done to kind of get people into this, and if it helps standard, then awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Next up in the news, so after our last episode where we went through a bunch of the changes with the Mitgo Vintage Cube, they have continued to make updates to this. A lot of them were cards that we kind of picked out being like, maybe this one doesn't really work, maybe they could do something different here. So aside of Khan, which has gone out and come back in because it was bugged briefly, the current changes are Bonebringer Valkyrie has come in for Angel of Sanctions. Ledger Shredder has come in for Lutel Core. I quite like that one personally. Yorgmore Thran Physician, which I know you picked out, James, has come in for Thought Picker Witch. Cabal Therapy has come in for Cabal Therapist. Lelia Braid Reforged is in for Dark Dweller Oracle. That one we were all kind of a bit shocked that that card had been cut. Thundermort Hellkite has come in for Rampaging Ferostodon. Retrofitter Foundry is in for Sorcerer's Spyglass. And Nicol Bolas Godpharaoh has come in for Tezzeret the Seeker. So, James, I know you're deep in the mines, getting a lot of reps in with the current cube. What do you think about these changes? Like, do you think they're justified? They're kind of like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, 100%. I think these are all positive changes, actually. I know Ryan Spain, who curates the cube now for Daybreak Games, who run Magic Online, has said this is an update about showing that they're being receptive to people's feedback on it. So I think like content creators and people have had some input into these. Yeah, I think these are all positive changes. I think highlights for me are Yargmuth coming in. I think that was a really bizarre omission if you're trying to push sacrifice. I think that's pretty much the best reason to do that. I think getting rid of Thought Picker Witch, like that card had become kind of a meme about how weak it was, and it was pretty weak. But I did also, like, I have seen some games locked out by Thought Picker Witch. You're never going to draw another relevant card, and that's quite fun. So I'm a little bit sad that that's going, but I'll grant you it was bad. It was very bad. Yeah, I think all the other cards like Ledger Shredder and Lutriel Core, I think, are like similar power level, but Ledger Shredder is kind of more interesting. You actually have to do something, and then you gotta get better payoff if you do. Lelia is just a great card. Retrofit Foundry is a great card. Really good thing to as the Saga 4. Nicol Bolas Godpharaoh, I think is there as like another big thing to Arena Rector for. I don't really think Arena Rector works.
I'm assuming Tezzeret, like, I've normally seen that in kind of like lists that are running. What's the one that gives you extra turns, like Time Vault? Is Time Vault in the cube?
Time Vault is not in the cube.
Good, because that card's miserable.
That card is completely yeah. No, it's a pretty weak Planeswalker in Vintage Cube, to be honest. It's like generally what it does is like if you already have mana rocks, it makes loads more mana. If you don't have mana rocks, it finds them. And then, maybe you can go and get like a top or something if you just really need a card. But yeah, the card's pretty weak, so I think it's a good card for sure.
Cool. And then our last bit of news for the day, the upcoming Lord of the Rings Universes Beyond set, which I personally am super hyped for. Spoilers for that start on Tuesday, May 30th. We will be talking about that on the podcast, so if that's something you're interested in, do make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from so you can hear us talking about all these fun cards from Middle-earth. Right, it's time to move on to our main topic of the day, the Cube set review for March of the Machines Aftermath. We will be doing this in Wooburg order, and we're talking about all the cards that we think could see play or are worth discussing under the realm of Cube. If we don't talk about a card, it's probably because it's either too niche, even for me, or its power level isn't really there. And remember, we are comparing these to every Magic card ever printed when we're talking about these, so our expectations are quite high. James, before we get into the set, this is the first time that we've seen like a mini kind of follow-up set. I think these booster packs only have like 5 or 6 cards in them, something like that. It's a really small set of like 50 cards that kind of ties in and kind of supplements the main set. What do you think about that? Kind of, how do you feel about these in general?
Yeah, I'm all right with it. I'm generally fine with them trying new things. The one downside I see is that I don't play a ton of Standard, but one of the things I always liked about Standard is that I already know all the cards because I've already drafted with them. This set you can't draft with. And for me, the way Magic cards are categorized is there's the real Magic cards, which came from regular standard legal sets that I drafted with. And then there's fake Magic cards, which are all the ones in Commander decks. Or
those are all the ones I like.
Yeah. No, but, I mean, they're all fine, but it's but I don't know what any of them do most of the time. So there are now the fake magic cards in standard, in my way of categorizing magic cards. But I'm aware that other ways of categorizing magic cards are available, and I don't strongly object to this. I think it's fine. It's quite a small set, so it's not like it's going to be half as standard, you know. What was your take on it?
So it's taken me time to get used to like the commander cards that are in booster packs and not in commander product, or not in like commander sets. So in like set boosters and collector boosters in standard sets now, there are commander cards that you can only get in there. That I agree with the added level of complexity not being a bit tough on the brain, especially when I'm in theory someone who's meant to be able to talk about them with confidence on the internet. But yeah, in general, I'm always fine with more cards. If I don't like them, I can just ignore them. I've very much kind of got into that mindset where it's kind of like, if I don't like it, I don't need to worry about it. It's fine. The main downside that I've seen so far is this set I don't think has sold fantastically well. Like booster boxes are coming down in price again because there's only like 50 cards in there. Like if ever there was a set where it was like buy the singles, it's this one, because there are some very good cards in here, which we'll be going through in a bit, but there's a lot of kind of there are still actually there are still uncommons in this set. I can't actually remember if there's commons in this set because there aren't really that many of them. But it has meant that kind of one card in particular, which we will get onto, Nissa Resurgent Animist, is so expensive already. I think it's like 30-40 like pounds, and the set's only been out for like 2 weeks, and like hopefully that will come down. But if not much of this set is open, that means it's going to be a really hard card to get hold of. And if it turns out to be good in standard, it doesn't really help the cost of standard because it's an expensive card that wasn't opened much. Like,
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. It's a pretty low power level set, is the impression I've got. Which means, yeah, as I say, not much of it will be open, so the prices are gonna be pretty high for the powerful cards, which you say it does. And by powerful cards, I might mean powerful card. We will see.
I think there's one other. I'm quite hype. I don't think we'll do a top 5 with this set. As we've done with other set reviews, mainly because there's if we do a top 5, we're doing like a 10th of the set.
Yeah.
Ranking a 10th of the set. But yeah. There is one other card. Spoilers. I think I'm actually more excited by, and it was £1. So
Okay,
let's
nice.
go. But with that, James, do you want to take it away with our first card of the day?
Sure. So first up, we have Coppercoat Vanguard. It is 1 white for a 2/2 creature human soldier. And it has each other human you control gets +1/+0 and has ward 1. So ward, of course, being whenever it becomes target of a spell ability an opponent controls, counter it unless they pay 1. This is a fine humans payoff. It's not it's not like a tier 1 tribal payoff, but being at uncommon, I think this is pretty nice for Peasant Cube. There is, I think, a decent chunk of the humans tribal stuff at uncommon. So I think it can definitely see a lot of play there. I think you just have better ones most of the time. I mean, if you had a humans tribal deck, you would put this card in it. But I think when you're looking for cuts for your cube and you need to cut a humans tribal card, this might be one you cut. What do you think?
I completely agree. This needs to go in a human tribal section. Humans is probably actually the easiest tribe to make work in cube because it goes across so many colors. Like I think a dedicated elf list is probably, or dedicated goblin list is probably stronger, but they go in less colors basically. What's nice about humans is that you you can disperse it over all the 5 colors of your cube. There's enough there. The odd thing actually is I'm not sure I see this in a peasant cube because like the 2 main human payoffs that I've seen run is things like Champion of the Parish or Thalia's Lieutenant, which are both rare. So I could see it more in like in a budget cube. I think in a budget environment, I think in a humans deck, I think it'll be quite good there. There is definitely a world where you kind of like you go turn 1 something like Kythian or Dauntless Bodyguard, turn 2 this, and then turn 3 like Adeline, which makes human tokens. Like that's quite scary. Like if you can combine this with things that are making human tokens, and I do think it could be quite strong.
Yeah, no, it has some upside for sure. I think I'd be a lot higher on it if it also got the ward 1. the fact that it just protects other creatures means that people are going to tend to kill this first, so then don't actually pay that tax. And then obviously, like no buff on toughness means it doesn't really help against any sort of removal or just in combat with your creature surviving.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, yeah. I think it could be a role player in the right cube, but yeah, I think it might struggle to get there. Let's talk about our first blue card. This one's going to be an interesting one. So first up, we have Filter Out. It is 1 blue for an instant. Return all non-creature, non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this is a bit of a difficult card to kind of work out where it goes. Like, not hitting creatures is tough. Like, a lot of places that will want to run a card like this, like a blue kind of like bouncy effect, will want to get rid of creatures. So it's a bit tricky. Like, the fact it's an instant is very nice. I'm sure there's something in like a Pauper Cube where you can make this work. The main thing I was thinking of, and I'm not sure if this is good, and I will throw this to you very swiftly, James, but in Powered Cube, is there a world where this is a second, and I will admit worse, paradoxical outcome?
Yeah, that's definitely the card I've seen it compared to. So generally, how you want to use paradoxical outcome in Powered Cube is in your Storm deck with a lot of 0 or 1 mana artifacts that tap for mana. So you can tap them for mana, pick them up with your paradoxical outcome, replay them. You now have the mana back, and paradoxical outcome draws a card for each one you return. The thing about this is it doesn't draw you that card. It's like, you could certainly construct turns where this was really good in that deck, where you go, I have 3 Mox and a Mana Vault. I tap them all for mana, pick them all up, replay them. My Storm count's now huge because I've both cast this spell and replayed my zeros. And now I can Brain Freeze you out, and I've drawn a bunch of cards. The thing is, paradoxical outcome also works when you're picking up 2 things because you need to draw some cards. It also, you can just go for it when you need to go for it, and you can try and draw into your payoffs. This requires you to be completely set up already, and the archetype of cards that's like, oh look, we're good with Moxen. It's like, guys, everything's good with Moxen. This is not an achievement to be good with Moxen. Because it doesn't do anything if you're just picking up random other zeros, right? Like, you'll often see paradoxical outcome used to like pick up my Mishra's Bauble. Like, picking up the Bauble doesn't do anything, but you're getting a card at least. This doesn't give you that. So yeah, I'm pretty skeptical on this one. I think you can do better. I don't really think they're good fair applications. Not bouncing creatures means this isn't really great interaction. I guess if your opponent was on like 1 million planeswalkers, you could be like, I bored in this big bounce spell, but it doesn't seem great to me.
Yeah, in general, when the best case scenario is a sideboard card, that means it's not playable in Cube. Just as a general golden rule, I think.
All right. Next up, we have Vesuvan Drifter. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/4 creature shapeshifter with flying. As you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and at the beginning of each combat, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you reveal a creature card this way, the Vesuvan Drifter becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, except it has flying. I really like this card. I think this card's cool and exciting. I don't know how good it is yet, but I think I want to try and make it work. So obviously the dream here is that you're casting your brainstorm effects or whatever, you're manipulating the top of your library, maybe Sensei's Dividing Top, and you manage to go to combat with like an Eldrazi or a Gristlebrand or something on top of your library. You reveal that, attack, get your Annihilator trigger, draw your cards, whatever you're doing with it. And it kind of works like a mini sneak attack, except it was already in play. And has the buyout of, it's a 3 mana 2/4 flyer. That's pretty good already. Just for text, you may look at the top card of your library at any time is actually also kind of underrated. If you just have fetch lands and stuff, the abilities just be, like, oh, I know the top card of my library is bad, I'm gonna shuffle it away, or I really want to draw the top card of my library, so I won't crack my fetch land this turn. And even just letting you plan your turn ahead a bit better is quite nice. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I am too. This is the card I was talking about. This is probably the one I'm most excited for from the set, and it's currently super cheap. Hopefully it stays that way for a bit longer. I have seen people are playing this in like show and tell and legacy, I think, as just a way of.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's a format with 4 brainstorms, so they're putting big things on top of their library. Obviously, in those formats where you have the consistency with it, it's definitely better. Like I could see this just going into a deck that was already kind of show and tell esque, like a show and tell sneak attack style deck, or maybe even possibly just reanimator. Like if you're in a slow, controlly reanimator deck, this is perfectly fine at holding down the board against an aggro opponent until you get the big dumb thing on top of your library, and then it's kind of ready to go. The card that it kind of compares to most of me, like I don't know if you remember Arcane Artisan. We ran that in queue before. That's the 3-mana 0/3 that you can pay 3 and tap it to exile a card from your hand and put a token copy of the card you exiled into play. But then if the Arcane Artisan dies, you lose all the tokens that you've created. I think this is way better than that. I think 2/4 flyer, just the body wise, the drawback is nowhere near as much. The setup is more. It needs to be on top of your library rather than in your hand. But I still like that. The other thing as well is I've been kind of slowly tinkering with kind of like a blue-white top of the deck matters without going too much into miracles, because I do think there is a bit of a feel bad with miracles. Kind of like if you're not putting any work into it and you just draw the miracle naturally, it doesn't feel great. So yeah, you've mentioned like Brainstorm, like Jace the Mind Sculptor is already in cubes. I'd be kind of looking to run this kind of power level. Yeah, Sensei's Divining Top. Scroll Rack as well could be quite interesting, maybe as a way if you're actually trying to make the archetype work. Just having ways of doing it, and like this is a good reward for players who are doing that, as well as having some application into some other decks as well. So I think for that reason, I'm definitely going to be giving this a go. My copy has already arrived. I'll be probably putting it in for the next one.
Nice.
Cool. Right, so let's move on to our first black card. We have Ayara's Oathsworn. It is 1 and a black for a 2/2 creature human knight with menace. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, if it has fewer than 4+1 on counters on it, put a +1 on counter on it. Then if it has exactly 4+1 on counters on it, search your library for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So, do you have mono black aggro in your cube? If so, I probably run this card. Like 2 mana, 2/2 menace. It's probably going to, like, if you're on the play, I think this is definitely getting in for damage, and then it becomes a 3/3 with menace, and you're probably happy with that. That's the main use for this if you're being black and being aggressive. The tutor ability is interesting, but I'm not actually sure what you're getting with it. Like maybe if you're another color, you're kind of like at that point you're getting your Ember Cleave or something like that. Like it was mainly kind of like the things I could see wanting to tutor with this are ways of finishing off your opponent when in theory you've been aggressive, which leads me to believe like Rakdos, kind of like getting your Fire Blast or getting like an Ember Cleave or even like a burn spell to finish them off. I'm not sure what there is in black that I want to be getting with an aggro deck, but that could be because black aggro is tricky to work. Cards like this will help it, give us more of them. Maybe we can run less Carnophages and run some 2023 cards instead. But what do you think, James? Where do you land on Ayara's Oathsworn?
Yeah, I was kind of going to say it was unplayable, and then you said mono black aggro, and I was like, yeah, the bar is actually very, very low for that deck. So yeah, I could kind of see it there. I think in terms of what you're getting, I like when you're getting it for free. A demonic tutor is kind of its own payoff, right? You get a threat, you get a removal spell, whatever you need. But maybe even this is the deck that can play like Grey Merchant or something. You could go and get that. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Having said that, I don't think you're going to demonic tutor very often with this card. You can. It's really a lot of turns. I think though it does have outs to like. Well, what if you can put more counters on it and you speed that up? Maybe there's like a green black counters deck for like some menace, because you like to have keywords on your creatures when you're buffing them. and then you can like get this demonic tutor really quickly, if like maybe even turn after you play it. The issue of that though is you still do need to be able to connect, and the setup cost is pretty high. If you're trying to use it in that way, and as just a threat, it's underwhelming. But better than Carnophage, so maybe mono back. Cool. Next up, we have Markov Baron. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature vampire noble at uncommon. It has Convoke, Lifelink. Other vampires you control get +1/+1, and Madness for 2 and a black. That's a lot of abilities, and they're all really good. 3 mana is normally more than you want to pay for the Lords, but having Convoke is really nice here because Vampire does tend to have quite a lot of tokens. So it's often gonna, you're often gonna be able to go like turn 3 Vampire, tap like my remaining land and that Vampire and 1 more Vampire and play this. And that's really, really mana efficient. That lets you snowball really well. Madness is also great here. Vampires almost always has a Madness theme in the deck. So if you're doing Vampire Tribal in your cube, I think Madness is going to work out great. I think this is a really good Lord, actually. Like, obviously, it's not like every cube has a Vampire Tribal deck in it, and that's the only time you would want this card. But I think if you do, it's an auto-include. I think it's one of the best Lords.
Yeah, same. I really like it. I'm assuming as well you can convoke it when you Madness it as well. If you're discarding it, you can.
Yes, yeah, that works how you want.
That's really nice. And yeah, as you were saying, like most of the Madness cards printed in the last, like, I was going to say 3 years, but in the second Innistrad set was probably about 6-7 years ago now. Yeah, since then, most of the Madness cards have been on vampires. We also had the Angie Commander deck. Yeah, the other card as well, which Falconwrath Gorger. I don't know if you know what that does. It's a single red for a 2/1 that gives all vampires you control Madness.
That's cool.
Like there's definitely a deck that exists, I think, in maybe you could do it in Peasant, but definitely kind of like a synergistic unpowered cube. Yeah, red black vampires with a Madness sub theme. I think it could be quite cool.
Okay, that's nice. The other nice thing about Madness is you can kind of give this card flash. If you have a way to discard at instant speed, your Madness trigger goes on the stack, you can just cast it whenever that discard trigger happens. And having a flash Lord is pretty strong if you can get some blowouts in combat or against removal or whatever.
Seems cool. I do quite like this card, but yeah, it's finding the right place for this. But I kind of want to play whatever cube this is in, actually. So, all right. Next up, we have Urborg Scavengers. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature spirit. Whenever Urborg Scavengers enter the battlefield or attacks, exile target card from a graveyard and put a +1 counter on it. Urborg Scavengers has flying as long as a card exiled with it has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. So I actually quite like this effect. So in my cube already, I'm running Graveyard Trespasser. I like that card. That is a similar thing. That's 3 mana for a 3/3 with Ward, discard a card, and a similar style of enter the battlefield or attack, exile a card from a graveyard. That one does flip into a 4/4 werewolf, but importantly, that means you have to worry about Daybound, Nightbound. So the fact that this effectively comes in as a 3/3, I think. Like, you're playing this when there's already something in the graveyard. That does mean it could get stuck in your hand, but I think most of the time, but by the time this comes out, you're going to be removing something. It comes down as a 3/3. The ceiling of this card is also way higher. Like you could, there are very real creatures in cubes. Like, there should not be bad creatures. There will be, like, it will pick up 1 or 2 of these abilities over the course of the game if it survives. Especially flying. Flying does not seem that hard to get at all. If you can bring this down on, say, like turn 3/4, exile something from their graveyard, this becomes a 3/3 flyer, I think you are very happy. As well as also, more importantly, not having to run Daybound, Nightbound in your cube. that is the other thing that I am very up for. But yeah, I quite like this card actually, and this one might be worth a test. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I could kind of get on board with this being stronger than Graveyard Trespasser. I've not been massively impressed by Graveyard Trespasser, but yeah, this is certainly a more interesting card. And yeah, absolutely, let's get rid of everything that says day banned on it, as far as am concerned. Um, yeah, I think so. This ability is strong. The keyword ability. I think you're not meant to go massively out of your way for it. Is the one thing I'd say.
No, yeah, it's an upside. Yeah,
Exactly. This is like a nice when you get it thing. It's not like Soul Flayer where you're trying to massively build around it and be like, oh, look at my Hexproof Indestructible Double Strike Lifelink dude. But it is a nice thing to have. Also, if you have like hasters, you can go like play it. It's a 3/3 haste, attack with it straight away. It's a 4/4. It has flying or whatever you can exile. But obviously, early in the game, they probably don't have a lot in the graveyard, and it's just going to be a guy that grows. But that's fine. I don't think this is like going to be the most powerful free drop in any cube, but it is like it's a bit of incidental graveyard hate. It's and it's just a body that grows. I think it's fine. I don't think it's exciting really as on power level, but I think it's a nice card.
no, I think it's probably a needed role player. Like in mine, I added Graveyard Trespasser because as much as I love the graveyard in all of its forms, um, it was getting a bit out of hand in my cube. So I do think, like, if your black session is kind of anywhere kind of control-y or death and taxes-y, I do think you need something like that just to give it an answer. The interesting fact with this is that it does say exile target card. It gets the ability if it's a creature, but it can exile any card when you play it. So like things like Echo of Eons or something like that, or something or like a spell with flashback could be quite good. Like even like a Faithless Looting, you would snap that off just to make this a 3/3, and then you would start attacking with it, that kind of thing. Like I think this card will end up playing better than it looks, if I'm honest. But yeah, it is a interesting and fine card that will hopefully be less than 50p. So we can test it, we can try it. If it's not good, we can throw it away. If it's good, then hooray, we found a new toy.
Nice. Yeah, I think I do like it against those like value graveyard things. I think these effects are pretty hard to line up against like Reanimator specifically because
Yeah.
they tend to put the fatty in the graveyard and bring it back straight away. You don't get like a combat step to exile it.
But if you get rid of the Grizzlebrand, it does have flying and lifelink.
That is true.
That's quite good.
Mm?
We
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Right, do you want to take it away with our first green card?
Cool. Yeah. Next up, we've got Nissa, Resurgent Animist. It is 2 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature Elf Scout, and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. The ability well known from Lotus Cobra. But there's more. Then, if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or an elemental card. Put that card in your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. This is a cool card. I think it's landfall, make a mana of any color is a pretty powerful ability. I think this is worse than Lotus Cobra on balance because Lotus Cobra can lead to those super explosive starts. Where you make back, you can get to a 5-drop on turn 2 of a fetch land, for example. This just being a 3-drop, that ceiling's a lot lower, like in terms of explosiveness, but it does stuff later, which Lotus Cobra doesn't necessarily. And it is worth noting, it's not just the first time you get a mana, the second time you get a card. So you get your mana every time. You just only get the card the second time. So yeah, if you play this and next time you play a fetch land, it is 2 mana and the card, and that's pretty good. You do need to make sure you have enough of those elf and elemental cards, and ideally you'd want them not to just be a bunch of Llanowar elves, because drawing into a bunch of Llanowar elves later isn't that good. You want them to be like cards that matter from like turn 4 onwards. But yeah, I think it's a fine card. I could see trying it. I don't think it's like mind-blowingly powerful.
this isn't a mono green card. Like, yeah, as you're unless you are specifically supporting elf tribal, this doesn't, like, most of the elves in your cube are going to be small mana dorks. When this gets better, yeah, is if the elementals in your pool are like the pitch elementals or like Omnath. Like, this seems kind of broken in a deck with Omnath. Like, play this on turn 3, play a fetch land on turn 4, go get your Omnath. That seems pretty strong. And like the pitch elementals are very broken. I've done a whole video on them on the YouTube channel, but yeah, I think the primary reason why this card is quite pricey now, because people are trying to put it in decks where they're going to get Omnath. Like, this is their 3-drop, goes and gets them either like Solitude or something like that, or it gets them Omnath. Like either of the, like, if those are your 2 hits in your deck, you're kind of happy with both of them.
Yeah, that's nice. I think Oracle of Muldiah is another really nice one for
nice.
a few purposes. It's going to go really well in the same deck. Because you do want the ability to play multiple lands turn, which again you don't generally do in mono green. You don't need fetch lands; you're one color. I think you want to be able to play multiple lands in a turn, and it's also worth noting with this card, it's very easy to look at this card and think, oh, it just makes mana every turn. If you don't have a land drop, it doesn't make you a mana. It's it can be a real downside here as well.
Yeah. I think that also, like, that goes into what you're saying, is why, just as the base level for that ability, the Cobra is better because it comes down earlier when you're more likely to have a land in hand. It coming down later means you're less likely to have that land. If this, as you mentioned earlier, like, this is the card that has suffered by this being such a small set the most, because it's wildly expensive, and I think it's probably unfortunately going to stay that way until it sees a reprint, which God knows when that will be, or unless another card shoots up and people start opening more of the product. But yeah, with Lord of the Rings, like, a month away at time of recording, it doesn't look good for the prices of Nissa Resurgent Animist, but we can hope anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next up we have Tranquil Thrillback. It is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature dinosaur. When Tranquil Thrillback enters the battlefield, you may pay green up to 3 times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, choose up to that many. So you can choose from destroy target artifact or enchantment, exile target player's graveyard, or you gain 4 life. So, at the base level job for me of being a Reclamation Sage, it is worse than a Reclamation Sage. The extra mana, the 4 mana on ETB to destroy an artifact or enchantment isn't great. But the added utility of this card, I do think, is quite good. Like, yes, you do have to pay for it, but the top 2, the destroy target artifact or enchantment or the exile target player's graveyard, are both relevant. Like, those are both things that I can see you wanting to be doing in Cube. The gain 4 life isn't that relevant until it is very relevant. Like, this can come down and stabilize you against the aggro opponent. Like, you play this on turn 4, if you've just been beaten down all turn, it's a 3/3, it'll probably trade with like a Rabble Master, or it'll block a monkey, that kind of thing, and gain you 4 life. It probably won't get there in the highest power cubes, but that utility is quite nice. I do quite like it. I do think it could be quite interesting. What do you think, James?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those cards that is flexible, but just each mode is a little bit underrated. And it's quite hard, honestly, for more than one of these modes to be good at any one time. Like, how many spots do you care about killing a graveyard and you care about disenchanting stuff? It comes up, but it's generally going to be like one of them.
Phyrexian Dragon Engine's a messed up card.
Yeah, that's true. I was a lot more into it when I thought you could choose the same mode multiple times and just like gain 16. But as it is, I think it's just a bit too expensive for what it's offering. 4 mana is just not an acceptable amount to pay for your Reclamation Sage.
No, I completely agree.
Cool. Next up, we have Feast of the Victorious Dead. Great card name. It is white and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if 1 or more creatures died this turn, you gain that much life and distribute that many +1/+1 counters among creatures you control. This is a card that obviously needs loads of setup. It's for an Aristocrats deck. The way I'm seeing this is it's kind of like a Blood Artist, but it doesn't kill you right away. and I don't know that I need that. Um, like I don't know, life gain is so much worse than anything that kills your opponent, and like yeah, the counters are nice, but um, it's kind of tough how you use them because it's in your end step. So your opponent's about to untap and get a turn. If you put them all on one thing, they can just kill it. If you spread them out a bit more, maybe they probably have good blocks, right? I kind of think this is a worse blood artist, and there's already a bunch of blood artists, and they're not amazing. This just seems like loads of setup cost, and if I'm paying the setup costs, I want to kill them, and this doesn't do that right away.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think this is for the cube that is running aristocrats and also life gain. Like it's one that is kind of maybe doing aristocrats in like red black and then is doing life gain in white black, which I think you do see in a lot of in budget cubes or lower powered cubes, just because those are archetypes printed into a lot of sets. Like those are basically the default mechanics in like core sets and stuff. So I do think like in those maybe, but yeah, yeah. When you compare it to Blood Artist, it's like yeah, just run Blood Artist, run something better in your guild slot. I do agree.
Yep. I think the issue I'd have in life gain is just your opponent can choose whether they trade or not. You know, they don't need to give you this trigger. They can untap, kill it on their turn. It only triggers on your end step, so you don't get a trigger. They kill stuff on their turn.
No, that's fair. All right, let's move on to our first Boros card of the day. We have Nahiri Forged in Fury. It is 4 red and a white for a 5/4 legendary creature, Core Artificer. It has affinity for equipment, which means this spell costs 1 less to cast for each equipment that you control. And whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, and you may cast equipment spells this way without paying their mana costs. So I do think this is an interesting card. The setup could be a bit much because this really wants you to probably have at least 2 bits of equipment already in play. That way you're then paying 4 mana for a 5/4. That's good. Like that's a solid rate. Nahiri doesn't have to be the equipped creature that's attacking to get the trigger, which is nice. So you can already have something in play, play Nahiri, attack with it, you get your value straight away. So that is card advantage in Boros. We do like that. That is nice. If we flip an equipment, then we're very happy. Obviously, the dream scenario is we flip like a Batterskull or a Cauldron Complete, then we're very, very happy. But yeah, realistically, this wants a number of equipment in play, equipped to a creature ready to attack when you play it. That is a lot of hoops to jump through when you can just play Batterskull or Cauldron Complete or something like that. I think every set I put a Boros Equipment Matters card on this list and make you talk about it, James. For that, I apologize. At some point, we will get there.
That's all right. I'm sure I've got an audio clip of me somewhere soapboxing about Equipment Matters cards. I could replay it. I think this is. I think Equipment Matters stuff plays a lot better when it's like you need an equipment for it to work. Like you attack with an equipped creature and get a thing. That stuff works fine. But affinity for equipment is kind of tricky because you just can't put like 15 pieces of equipment in a deck. You won't have a functional deck. You won't have any creatures to equip them to. Often the equipment that does play well for this stuff is like the living weapons and the reconfigures, which are both creatures and equipment. Because that does let you just up your total equipment count. But like, you're not. It's a disaster if you pay for 6 of this. I don't think you're happy at 5. I don't think you're that happy at 4, and you're just not gonna have 3 pieces of equipment in play in the early game to get it cheaper than that. Yeah, the ability is good, but it's I don't think this is enough of a payoff really. I think you need Equipment Matters cards that are good when you have 1 equipment. So I think for that reason I'd be pretty low on this card. It's like by all means like try it, it'll do some stuff, but I'd start off being skeptical.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think we're, and admittedly I said this in the last one we did, we need another set with reconfigure or like a Modern Masters level one with like reconfigure. Like I know technically we did just have there was Famiridon in all B1, but none of those was super playable. So maybe we need 5 more sets before we get there.
Yeah, very possibly.
Yeah. Right, cool. Do you want to take it away with our next Boros card?
Yeah. So next up, this is a cool one actually. We have Nahiri's Resolve. It is 3 a red and a white for an enchantment. It has creatures you control get +1/+0 and have haste. Pretty good start. At the beginning of your end step, exile any number of non-token artifacts and/or creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. This is a kind of exciting card. I think it's going to be too slow for like really powerful cubes, but there's a lot of value here. If you have like even 1 or 2 things with good ETBs going, and you just get to trigger those every single turn for the rest of the game, that's going to be really tough for your opponent to grind through if you're getting any sort of board presence or even just card advantage out of that. This reminds me of, the Yorion decks where you'd be combining Yorion with like something that then flickers out the Yorion and they just go in and out at the beginning of each end step. And you kind of get to just do that off 1 card, which is pretty cool. The downside is, though, and it is a big downside, is that because you exile the creatures on your end step and they come back on your upkeep, they are very much not there to block and keep you alive. And staying alive is exactly what you need to do when you've played a 5-mana do-nothing enchantment. In fact, in terms of keeping you alive, it might be worse than do nothing. It might be 5 mana, get rid of my blocker for the turn. So you've got to be conscious of that. But it's worth noting, you don't like have to exile everything. You can be like, exile my guy with a good ETB and my artifact for good ETB, keep my 2 blockers, and that's fine. And obviously the +1/+0 haste means you do get to attack with them when they come back on your upkeep. Yeah, I think this is a pretty cool card. It's interesting having the blink payoff in Boros. It's normally more of a blue-white theme, but there's a lot of value here. The ceiling's really high on this card, I think, if you're like trying to play a value-y blink game.
Yeah, definitely. No, I completely agree. Yeah, I've had, actually, I still kind of technically have a blink as a very small subtype in my Azuria section. So we've got like Soul Herder, Yorion, and Ephemerate is kind of like the little bit of value cards. And like there's plenty of good white creatures with ETBs. Like but I was looking at what red ones have ETBs. That's kind of for me, that was kind of the interesting part. So like the ones I got that I either play now or have played in the past. So we've got like Caves of Chaos Adventurer, the initiative creature. Like this with initiative creatures seems kind of dumb, because if you have multiple initiative creatures, they will come in, give the initiative a bunch of times. We like that. Fury is in a lot of cubes.
That's great, yeah.
Yep. And Inferno Titan also seemed.
Inferno Titan's very good. You do kind of want the cheap ones, though, right? Because you want this to be coming down and doing something right away.
And that's kind of where I think this just being a straight Boros card might fall down a little bit. Like, admittedly, my red section is not, and most red sections in Cube will not be made to take use out of a Blink archetype. And that's primarily because most of the abilities on kind of red creatures are like attack abilities, kind of like your Rebel Masters, or maybe they're like a deal damage ability with like Felden, that kind of stuff. It's more like combat based rather than enter the battlefield based.
Yeah, that's true. I think where you get your value. Pyromancer is a really good one here, right? The ETB, discard 2 cards or 2, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And it is extremely splashable. It's the other thing I'd say.
No, that's true. And actually, I guess like Zealous Conscripts could be quite fun with this.
Oh, that's spicy.
Just a value way of just stealing something every turn. Well, that could be quite good.
The problem I have with Zealous Conscripts with this is that it's going to kill my opponent far too quickly, and I just want to accumulate value over 10 turns. You know, it's going to be like, oh, but they're dead. I was having so much fun.
No,
it seems cool.
No, fair. But yeah, let's move on to our first 3-color card of the day. I'm going to say, we have Narset Enlightened Exile. It is 1 blue, red, and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature, Human Monk. It has the static ability of creatures you control have prowess, and whenever Narset Enlightened Exile attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with a mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So I like this card. I think it's cool, but just right off the bat, it's always worth saying that 3-color cards are always slightly harder to justify than monocolored cards or two-colored cards because it requires an additional requirement from your deck, even with how good mana and cubes are nowadays. Like yes, this is splashable, but it's still something to consider. The effect is very good though. Like your whole board getting prowess is strong. It does ask you to have a board state and then spells to cast afterwards, which might be where this falls down in higher powered cubes. But there's just a lot of good spells in cube, and being able to copy them whenever this attacks is very good. There's probably more powerful things you can do with this, with like your power 9 cards, like your ancestral recalls and the like in higher power level cubes. But where I could see this actually seeing play and being good is like if there's a cube with kind of like a Feather the Redeemed deck in Boros, where you're kind of getting value for targeting your own creatures with like pump spells that kind of draw you cards and churn your way through your deck and pump up your whole board, sort of like a blitz style of deck. I think in that this could be very good and is something that I want to try at some point. I do like the blitz style of decks. And that deck it's probably fine splashing blue for some card draw anyway. What do you think, James? Is there like a more of an application than just kind of like a beat down browsy thing?
Yeah, I think this card's cool. The place I was thinking it maybe fits best is there's a lot of Young Pyromancer type effects available now, right? We have the OG Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, Saheeli, Monastery Mentor. Probably some more I'm forgetting about. This is fantastic with those cards because you already want to be casting a bunch of cantrips and stuff in those decks anyway, and then this really just puts it into overdrive. Like everyone knows how powerful the difference between Monastery Mentor and Young Pyromancer is when all those tokens have prowess. And if you have this with Monastery Mentor, the tokens have prowess twice, and you're going to kill them really quickly. And it gives you a spell on the way in if you have mana left over. This isn't to say this card's great. Like, it's obviously pretty high setup. It's 4 mana, and it doesn't want to be like the last spell you cast that turn. You want to have some mana left, so you can cast the thing you exile. And it's ideally those decks want to be some cheap creatures and then everything else is spells, so it's diluting that a little bit. But I think the ceiling is there. Like if you're going wide with pyromancery stuff, I think this is like another way you can get paid off of that. It can be a little bit clunky, but I think there's some power level. I think it's an interesting card.
No, that's cool. No, I like that. Actually, getting people to play the spells deck in my cube, I quite like. Like the Pyromancer thing has never really got there in mine. People just take the good blue cards and the good red cards and do other things with them. But I like there being an incentive to do that. That seems cool for me.
Nice.
Do you want to take our only Rakdos card of the day?
Sure. So in Rakdos we have Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. It is 2 black and a red for a 4/3 legendary creature demon. Has flying and trample. A 4/3 flying trample, pretty good start. And whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, put a +1/+1 counter on Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. Exile the top card of your library till your next end step. You may play that card. So there's one exciting application of this card that's hard to set up, and it can do some fair stuff. We'll do the fair stuff first. 4/3 flying trample for 4 that's a lot. That's like you wouldn't play that, but it's not completely embarrassing until it gets lightning bolted. You'll be embarrassed about that. The ability is the downside is it doesn't enable this at all itself. It will hit you for 4, not 1. So it won't trigger its own ability. I think what we're meant to be doing with that ability in the quote unquote fair application is like Blood Artist, Mayhem Devil. If we're doing that Rakdos sacrifice thing, there's a lot of ways that they do tend to be, here's a bunch of instances of your opponent losing exactly 1 life. And see, they'll each put a counter on Obnixilis. So it kind of almost like doubles up on the damage, because with flying and trample, they're not going to be able to block very much of that damage. So that's kind of cool. It is a 4-drop, so how much that deck wants it is a question worth asking. But it could do some powerful stuff there, even if it's a bit high setup. The combo application, which is probably bad, is this does work with All Will Be One from its namesake set, in fact,
Yeah.
Phyrexia All Will Be One,
Yeah.
which was the 3 red enchantment. Whenever you put a counter on a creature, deal 1 to something. So if you have both these cards, whenever your opponent loses life, you'll put a counter on Obnixilis, that will trigger the All Be One, that will deal them another damage, that will trigger Obnixilis again, and your opponent will die. The downside, of course, is that you know, it's a bit of a clunky combo, and neither of those cards, or All Be One, is going to be hard to make a lot of use of outside of a combo. But I think it's definitely interesting, and like having half of your combo just be an enchantment that can sit there. Enchantment's a lot harder to kill than creatures. That's quite nice. Having said that, I don't think you want to be jamming that combo into every cube by any means. But yeah, I think maybe just doing this with some blood artists and whatnot is playable. No, it's great, but it does some stuff, I think.
No, I think that's fair. I think it's aristocrats, or I guess a deck where you're making a lot of 1/1s and attacking with them, like more Warmash style things. But that is going to end up an aristocrat deck just because of how cubes are. The main thing with this is, so one of the reasons I've cut aristocrats from my cube recently is because all the creatures kind of suck. Like you're spending a lot of 2 mana for 0/1s or 4 mana for 2/2s, that kind of thing. Like this is a creature that can kill people. Like yes, this is a aristocrat card that does not make tokens, it does not sacrifice things, and it does not drain them out. So it does not do any of the things that an aristocrat card actually needs to do. But it will hit people in the face, which I think might be like, if it gets in, like I could see like if I was still running aristocrats, I could see myself trying this just as a way of actually giving the deck a bit more juice, because I personally think that in higher powered level cubes, aristocrats has just fallen off recently. There hasn't been enough powerful cards printed for it compared to other things for it to kind of keep up. This isn't like a juiced up blood artist or anything like that. It is a different way of taking it that kind of goes in the deck that's already there. It's probably very Win-More-y, but I'm kind of in for that at this point.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting it doesn't quite work how you want it to with the attacking with tokens thing. Like if you attack them with 3/1/1s, they are going to lose 3 life, and this ability isn't going to trigger.
Oh, it's not 1. Yes, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. It would be a lot better if it worked that way, but
So it is just aristocrats then. That's the only shell it can really realistically go into.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it will come up, I guess, that you can, like, if the board's clear, you attack them with 1 token because you get a card and a counter, and that's pretty good.
Or a 1/1 with double strike and this. Ooh.
Oof, game.
Ooh, that's value.
GG's.
There we go. Nice. Cool. All right, let's move on to our only Gruul card of the day. We have Samut, Vizier of Naktamun. It is 1 red and a green for a 2/3 legendary creature, human warrior cleric, with first strike, vigilance, haste, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, if that creature enters the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So the more I think about this card, the more I actually like it. In these colors, a lot of things naturally have haste. Like, I'm thinking about the Gruul deck I played recently, and like apart from Mana Dorks, basically everything had haste, or they were Rebel Master cards that make tokens that come in tapped and attacking, so they'd come in that turn, they will trigger this. If you're on the play and you play this on turn 2 because of a Mana Dork, I think you're in a supremely good position and you're just beating down your opponent and getting more value from it. Like, it's not a complicated card. It's a 3 mana Gruul thing that you want to be turning sideways and will give you a bit of card draw. But I quite like this.
I think it's all right. You can definitely construct scenarios where it's going to be really good. The issue I have with it is that your opponent does get to factor this in when they decide their blocks, right? they can, they can trade with a creature that has haste, and the ones that entered before this turn they can take a hit from. And it's not like a lot of the time you're not going to be able to connect with this the turn you play it. It's only a 2/3 on turn 3. Um, and like if you're not getting your card right away out of this, then it's a lot less exciting, right? Um, but I think I could definitely see draws where it lines up great. And it's really nice with like questing beast type stuff that's really hard to block. But I just can't worry that it's a bit win more. It's
No, that's fair.
rule card that is good when my 4-drop gets to connect is like I don't know if that's where I want to be. Um, I feel like I'd rather have like just another standalone threat instead of that.
No, that's fair. And I guess at 3, you are comparing it then to all the Rebel Master cards as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no, that's completely fair. And I would put this below most Rebel Master cards. All right, do you want to take it away with our final card of the day?
Certainly will. Finally, we have Khan Legacy Reforged. The Khan is a 5 colorless mana for a star legendary artifact creature golem. Khan Legacy Reforged's power and toughness are each equal to the greatest mana value amongst artifacts you control. So notably, it is, of course, an artifact creature itself, so it's always a 5/5 at worst. And then it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, add a colorless mana for each artifact you control. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells, and until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So this mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells is a kind of weird line of text. It was, of course, what was on the Power Stones from a couple of sets ago. So this is basically you can use them to cast artifacts, or you can use them to pay for abilities. So 5 mana 5/5 artifact creature is like, I mean, you can't just play that, but it's you workshop it out. It's quite nice. And then, but this ability is like you could see scenarios where it would be great, but it's a lot needs to line up, right? Because you don't get it straight away. You don't get it the next turn. You need to already have a bunch of artifacts and have more expensive artifacts specifically to cast. Like a lot of the big mana decks, like you'll have some top end artifacts like your mid battle spheres and whatnot, but you'll also have top end cards that are like, Khan, 7 mana Khan, or Ugin, or even like casting an upheaval. And it doesn't work great with them. I suppose it does kind of work with upheaval because you get to replay your artifacts post upheaval. But I think we can just do better than this at 5. Like, do we want this over like Lodestone Golem, for example? At 4-drop seems like kind of a more powerful effect. Like it's gonna, I feel like that leads to winning more games. I don't know. The making it bigger thing is like barely matters, right? Like, sure, you play Battle Ball, it's like a 7 instead of a 5/5, and that's fine. But I don't think that's really what we're about.
I think just the fact you get the mana the following turn just makes it way too slow. Also, artifacts are probably an artifact creature is probably the easiest thing to kill in a cube.
Yeah, that's true.
Just it dies to all creature removal and just the random artifact removal as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you any value, any ETBs. Like, there's no ETB, there's no taxing effect. It does just die.
Would you prefer this? It was slightly cheaper, but like had the construct text, so like its power and toughness were equal to the number of artifacts you control, rather than like the standard 5/5 or has the potential of getting bigger. Just because constructs have been really, really good recently, they're just getting better and better.
Constructs have been really good, but I think a part of that is because they all come in. Like, I don't want to spend 5 mana just to make a construct,
Yeah,
I'm expecting more from that. Like Urza is 4 mana, you get a construct and a bunch of mana back, and a mana sink. Like they do get better in multiples, but like I think actually if you compare this card to like the 4 mana Karn Planeswalker, it's a really embarrassing comparison for this card, right? That like makes multiple card structs for 4 mana, which are probably going to be bigger than this guy,
Yeah, quite probably.
and has card advantage built in, and it's less mana. That's for me, it's not looking good for Card Legacy Reforged.
No, definitely this Khan isn't it. The last one wasn't either. I don't think we even spoke about the Khan from Brothers War because
Oh yeah, that card
wasn't very
sucked.
good. Yeah, Rip Khan, give us a good Khan. Come on.
Give the people what they want.
Right, awesome. I think that's going to end it for the set review. We have one final segment. We're going to be going through what have we been playing recently. So over the weekend, James, we did some cubing. We played some games.
Sure did.
We had a lovely time.
There was cube, there was barbecue. It was a good afternoon.
Yes, very solid. Yes, it is the summer of barbecue. We're back. Thank God. It's been too long. I'm currently in shorts for the first time in a while. Let's go. Cool. So yeah, so we'll just talk about our decks a bit. So I ended up going 2-1 in the cube draft with a red-green monsters deck with a madness sub-theme. I really enjoyed it. It was basically just looking to curve out and hit face. It had some mana dorks, nice and cheap. Had some burn to work as some removal as well. I had a Rebel Master and Squee at 3 mana, and a Minsk and Boo, Rampaging Raptor, and Questing Beast at 4, along with like a mini Madness package. So it had a Survivor of the Fittest, a Vengevine, 2 Root Wallers, and his Ravager, which I'm just constantly impressed by how good that card actually is. I drew like 9 cards off that card at one point. Most of the games were very good and interactive, but a couple of games I just won on turn 4 just by curving out, just like turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Rebel Master, turn 3 4-drop with haste, turn 4 second 4-drop with haste, and they're dead. Like, it was very good. I was very impressed with it. It's the first time I've played with Minsk and Boo in quite a while. Yeah, do you know you draw cards when you fling the
yeah,
fling
that
the
card is
hamster
not
James?
reasonable.
So
I
really
had heard. I had heard. Yeah.
But there was one game where I couldn't fling the hamster because it would have killed me. That's when I was playing against you. What did you end up in, James?
Yeah, I had a bit of a pile. It was spicy. I enjoyed myself. I went 1-2. It was the worst cube deck I've probably had in your cube for a while, but it had some power level. So it was so the story of my cube was I open my first pack, I see a fast bond. It's a real pet card of mine. It's not that great. I exercised all of my discipline and didn't take it. I took like Shieldred first pick. As pack 1 winds down, I'm seeing a lot of green cards. I spec on a couple of them, and then Fast Bond comes back, and I only have so much discipline, so I took it the second time around.
It was a 10-person draft as well. So 9 other players. Yeah.
It was a 10-person draft, yeah. 9 other players decided to exercise even more discipline than me. So I take Fast Bond. I ended up with a weird combination of things in my deck where I have multiple draw 7s with which are obviously great with the Fast Bond, and I'm playing with Shieldred and a Hull Breacher. But then I also have like Fast Bond, Crucible of Worlds, Strip Mine, Wasteland, or maybe I didn't have a Wasteland, I think, and I think 4 fetch lands maybe. So we definitely had some power level ceilings. We were a lot of colors though, and yeah, with double costs.
Did you play the double white card in the end?
I did play the Wandering Emperor, yes. Well, it was just a scenario where like all of my fixing seemed to touch white, so it was kind of I had like 11 white sources without putting a planes in my deck. Yeah, the deck wasn't great. But I had a good time.
No, good. It's probably also worth us just talking quickly about the winning deck. So it was a chat from Tom over from Belgium, very nice lad. His deck looked really good. Like it was like a Grixis Artifacts with Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle, along with Lion's Eye Diamond, Underworld Breach, and Brain Freeze. From watching and hearing about how his games went, though, I think most of them came down with him beating people with a Patchwork Automaton, a Chrome Host Seed Shark, and a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Oh, and also he had a Chaos Defiler in there as well. That deck looked really strong. It's actually the second one in a row that the artifact deck has taken down. I'm kind of happy that it's doing well, but dear God, maybe it's too good. Who knows? Let's find out. Did you see any of those games at all, James?
I saw most of the finals. It looked like a cool deck. Yeah. I mean, having that amount of combo backdoor is even if it's not winning every game, like both console, Foracle, and having Breach, Diamond, and Freeze will just lead to a lot of free wins in of themselves. And yeah, I do think the Artifacts package is strong. It's especially with Versus Saga. I don't think it's like, definitely don't think it's too good or anything. I think it's more probably as a play group, we're not valuing those cards highly enough at the moment. Like I think 2 people in a row have come out with pretty good versions with most of what you'd want for that deck. So yeah, I think maybe it's just those Wishes workshops need to go up for pick orders a little bit.
No, definitely. I think that's fair. And then, did you hear what happened on Sunday?
Yeah. So on Sunday was a in-person paper vintage tournament in London, which was won by David Inglis at Unhinged Basic, I believe, on Twitter, and second place was our own Josh Bailey, featured on the podcast last week, Fire Truck on Modo. For people who know the Modo vintage scene, he was playing Squeevine, which is a cool deck. I think the winner was on Esper Tinker. But that sounded like a really cool tournament. Full proxy, obviously, because not everyone would like to sell their house to play in a Magic event.
So the other thing that happened at this vintage event is the cube kind of spilled over. So in our cube pod, we kind of take, like, not seriously, but there are stakes. Basically, we have belts. We have actual factual. I mean, plastic and cardboard. But if you win the cube draft, you are the champion. Your name goes on the box. You get a championship belt. Unfortunately, our champions weren't able to attend the last cube draft, so we did a Money in the Bank. You get a contract to challenge someone at any point. So the winner of the cube draft on Saturday challenged Josh after the vintage tournament on Sunday, and he was victorious. So we currently have an intercontinental champion. We need to ship a belt to Belgium. Let's go. Congratulations. Very good. Yes, mother.
Yeah, that's impressive, Tom. It's yeah, I'm quite shocked that we've gone international this early.
Let's go.
But, yeah,
it's so good.
That's impressive. I like it. I like it a lot.
That wasn't the only thing that happened on Sunday. James, you were also taking part in the Arena Open. How did that go?
For people who haven't played in them before, it's a limited tournament. So day 1 is sealed, and day 2 is 2 best of 3 drafts. And this set's a lot of fun draft-wise. I managed to go 7-0 in the sealed. I 3-1 for first draft with a pretty good red-black deck, with an Atali at the top of the curve and some good sacrifice stuff. Some steal and sack action with Furnace Rains and a lot of sack outlets. And then the second deck, I had a really sweet Grixis deck with, it was blue-red with a lot of removal and card draw, splashing for Unseal the Necropolis. So Unseal the Necropolis, people haven't played much of the format, is 2 and a black for an instant. So a key card of the deck, really. Each player mills 3 cards, then you return 2 creatures from your graveyard to hand. So I went 2-1 with this deck. I did not attack my opponent once. It was phenomenal. So the way I was winning all of my games was I cast Unseal the Necropolis. I return either Halo Forged Scarb, which is 4 and a blue for a 4/4. When it ETBs, each player mills 2, and then you put an instant or sorcery card on top of your library. So you can go Unseal the Necropolis, return your Halo Forged Scarb, be able to put Unseal of Necropolis on top. You trade off, you get rid of your Halo Forge Scarf somehow, you do it again. Or the other one I had was Oracle of Tragedy, which is 2 mana 1/3. When it ETBs or dies, you can shuffle up to 4 cards with CMC 3 or greater from your graveyard into your library. So you can just, it's like a mini Doomsday from your graveyard. You shuffle back in 4 action spells, probably including the Unseal. So you just never have to attack your opponent. You just mill them out with your Unseals, casting it every turn. And the really nice thing about this combo as well is it doesn't matter what order you draw them in, because each combo piece returns other combo pieces. You can just play your Unseal early. You can just run out your Halo Forge Scarab. As long as you're never in the spot where all 3 of them are in the graveyard, you can always get your combo back. And keep going. So yeah, it played really, really well. I lost my last round to a red-white equipment deck that was far too quick for my nonsense. But I won. Yeah, I won the first 2 rounds against good grindy decks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And yes, that record was good enough for $500.
Let's go, James. Very good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Would have been nice to win 1 or 2 more for sake the numbers go up pretty quickly from there. But I was pretty happy with the result.
No, sweet. That's awesome. Congrats, man. But did I just hear that Boris Equipment beat Combo Deck? Ooh, James. No.
And the thing is, Boris Equipment isn't even that good, but they had multiple instances. The 2-mana Legend that's in the sort of Mystical Archive slot in this set, which is so it's one that when you attack with a creature that's equipped, it gets double strike.
Oh, okay, right.
So they were just like doing that on 2, equipment on 3, swinging for massive amounts of damage, and I was kind of Volcanic Spite or bust because I did not have time to set up my loops.
Nice. No, very good. No, well, yeah, congratulations, man. That's a very good result. I think one of the second ones like that you've had recently, so very well done. We'd love to see that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'd definitely recommend the Arena Opens to people if they enjoy Limited and have a free afternoon.
Right, awesome. Right, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you all very much for listening. Do make sure you leave us a review if you like this podcast. Tell a friend. It really helps out. And James, always a pleasure. Thank you very much, man.
Always a pleasure, Daniel. We'll see you guys again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you all soon. Goodbye.